in Indiana, and the place where we grew up was in the middle of farm country. So in the front of our house, across the street, was a cornfield, and behind our house, behind our yard, was another cornfield. And of course, those rotated sometimes between, corn and wheat and other things. But anyways, we had this large front yard and this large backyard. In the backyard was this giant tree. I don't even remember what kind of tree it was, just that it was really large. And my dad had built a tree fort up in it. Not quite a tree house, it was more just kind of a deck with the railing on the side. We'd go up there and hang out and play, and there was a ladder there. Well, coming out of the tree was this large branch. So the ladder's here, and with the tree fort, and then this branch, and then my dad hung a swing there. And it was just like a disc, and not a tire swing, just a disc that you would sit on and then swing. And I had a friend who lived just 2 doors down named George. George Benjamin actually was, his last name was my first name. And we were great friends, and we would hang out all the time. And there was one day which we were playing in the backyard, and we got the idea to take the swing, climb up the ladder, and see how high we could get. Just create some more momentum and have fun. And so we do that, and we get pretty high, and we're having a blast. And I don't remember if it was him or me, but one of us got the idea to see how high we could get and then jump off of the swing, off of the disc, and see, how high we can get. Well, we start slow, and we build back up with our jumps. I get to the point where I probably went a little bit too high, and as I'm leaving the disc in the middle of the air, instead of leaving it vertical and coming down so that I can land with my feet, I'm kind of angled a little bit. So I'm more parallel than I am vertical, horizontal than vertical, and I ended up landing on my back. And I was hurting. I went inside, told my mom, and we went to the doctor, and the doctor says that he thought, based on just his examination of me, that I had bruised my spleen. You can rupture your spleen, and that is serious. So a bruised spleen is no laughing matter. I was lucky that that's all that I had done in that moment. But when George and I are hanging out and we're talking about it, it seems like a risk worth taking, right? Because the fun that we're going to have. Oftentimes, young boys, young men, we're not necessarily thinking what can go wrong, we're thinking what can go right. And so the risk is worth taking. We know that there's risk, but it's worth taking. Now, all of us have probably taken some risks in our lives, and some of us have not taken risks. We've all just been too scared by something to do it. I know that that's been true in my life when I've opted out of something because, I just don't want to risk that, whatever the implications might be for that reason. Today, as we are wrapping up our series called True Story, we're going to look at the story of Queen Esther. If you know this story, it's a phenomenal story. I encourage you to go and check out the story, maybe watch a video on it. There's some great resources out there. But let me just summarize really quick for you what's going on. So Israel, the Jewish nation, they are in exile in Persia, okay? And the king of Persia, he has just a falling out with his wife, the queen, and so he's looking for a new queen. So he holds this beauty pageant that all the young eligible women are competing in, but it's not really their choice because it's the king. And so Esther is one of these women who's competing, and she gets chosen by the king to be the next queen. She's got an uncle by the name of Mordecai, and the two of them are Jews. But because they're in exile, they're keeping this a secret because they're a minority. Okay, they're looked down upon in this new place with these new people under this foreign rule. Now, Mordecai has actually won favor with the king because he's uncovered a plot to kill the king. Well, one day, this guy by the name of Haman, he doesn't like the Jewish people. And so he convinces the king to kill all of the Jews. So Mordecai gets wind of this, and he goes to Esther and says, Esther, you're the queen. You need to go and save your people. But the problem was that the queen couldn't just go to the king anytime she wanted. She had to be summoned by the king in order to do this. And so Mordecai is telling her, one, you need to risk your life, because if he doesn't like the fact that you are approaching him, he can kill you. But also, you're going to reveal that we're Jewish. And if he doesn't care about that, were then going to get killed along with everyone else. So he's asking Esther to take this big, big risk. So this story, it reveals something really, really incredible about who God is. But here's a fun fact for you, okay? That God is never actually mentioned in the story. In the book of Esther, his name is never actually mentioned, not once. And that's part of what makes the book of Esther so interesting. But although he's never mentioned, God's presence can be found on every single page, behind every scene, and in between every line that's taking place in this story. Now, this story in the book of Esther, it shows us that God never gives up on his people. It shows us that God is always working. It shows us that he has perfect timing. And it shows us that God uses ordinary people to do extraordinary things. Because as you know in the story, the Queen Esther, goes to the king and she throws a banquet for him, throws this feast for him. And she comes in and he extends grace. He says, okay, yeah, you've pleased me. She says, hey, attend to this party. And she does this numerous times, where on the final time when she does this, and she's throwing this feast for the king, she finally reveals to him, hey, I'm Jewish. My uncle is Jewish. And you've just signed this decree to kill all the Jewish people. And at that point, the king is furious, and he actually kills Haman instead. Because of Haman's treachery, his evil, his hatred, he gets what's coming to him. And so we see that God is working. And he uses Esther, who didn't even have a choice in the whole situation. She was just chosen to be the queen, had to be the queen, and now is thrust in this situation that she didn't ask for. And yet God uses her to rescue and to save the Jewish people. Now, the book of Esther reveals that about God, but it also shows us something about us. It shows us that we can trust that God won't leave us, even in the hardest situations. It shows us that we can trust that God is working. It shows us that we are often called by God to do something risky. And finally, it shows us that we can be used by God to rescue others. You see, you and I, we were created by a God who is good. That's something that we've talked about every single week. As we look at who God is, it's always come down to just his goodness. All of the descriptions of who God is can be summarized by good. That's what Jesus said, that God alone is good. And God is always working behind the scenes to protect and rescue his people. You and I, we are called and we can be used by our Creator to protect and rescue others. But understand that sometimes that will be risky. If you ever had the opportunity to do something risky for God or for others, I want you to remember this. That because of who God is, we can take risks for others. I know that a lot of times it's hard to figure out what we want to do. How are we going to do this for God? What does God want from us? What is God's will? And we're sometimes waiting for a sign, waiting for this clear message. But I want to tell you that you don't have to wait. When you know God, when you spend that time with him, you know what he cares about, and that moves you to action. You see a need, God cares about that. I need to do something in response to this. You don't have to wait for God to send you. Just the fact that the situation presented itself is God saying, I want you to move. I want you to act. I want you to trust me. Now I want to play a song for you guys. And the lyrics are going to be on the screen. And as I talk, I want you to maybe read the lyrics, listen to the lyrics, because a lot of times fear gets in the way of us choosing to take that risk. And this song is all about not being afraid. So I want you to listen to this song, to the words of this song. And I want you to think about them, and I want you to say them as a prayer to God. Or maybe you can reflect on who God is and on who you are. Or maybe write down some risks that God might be calling you to take for the sake of someone else.
I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. I am surrounded by the arms of a Father. I am surrounded by songs of deliverance. We've been liberated from our bondage. We're the sons and the daughters. Let us sing our freedom.
Now, throughout this series, we've always started with the idea of who God is, and then focused on who we are. And that's been on purpose because this is not about us, but on the God who made us. But we're not just trying to learn more about God. The purpose of Scripture isn't just for inspiration, but for transformation. And so I want to present you with three questions. Here are three questions that you can ask as you are engaging with Scripture, as you're reading these stories. First one, what does this passage reveal about who God is? Two, what does it reveal about who I am? And then three, now what should I do about it? When you ask those three questions, you don't need to understand everything about the background, the context, and the original language and whatnot. You can start here, these three simple questions. And this will bring you really far on the journey of transformation, of becoming more like Christ. Now, as we wrap up, let me just recap where we've been these last 4 weeks. Because God is a good creator, we can trust how He made us. Because God is powerful and present, we can do difficult things. Because God is in control, we can embrace the unknown. Because God is always working through and around us, we can take risks for others. Pray that you would continue to learn more about who God is, who you are, and let that process continue to transform you into His life.
I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God.
Hey, so our announcements aren't very many this week, but they're going to pick up here really soon because here's the thing. We are putting a plan in place to move back to in-person gatherings. We have received authorization to do this. It's going to take us time to put everything together. And so my goal is to put together a calendar of events for essentially, half of November and the rest of December, and get that out. So I just wanted you to be aware of the fact that we are moving in that direction. Things could always change, so I don't want to put that out there and then things come back and be like, Ben, why didn't you do this? So just understand that there's a chance that it could roll back on us, but we are moving in that direction, and I'm excited about that. There's going to be some changes to how we get to do things, but we are excited about the possibility of bringing back a lot of our activities, our life groups and whatnot. So just be on the lookout for information. Hopefully about this time next week, after we've solidified things and gotten our volunteer basis lined up to make it happen, we can get you the information about what's coming up next. And the return of a lot of the things that we've been missing out for the last 7-8 months. So just be on the lookout for that next week, and hope you have a great weekend. Bye.